Good evening to one and all. Welcome to the second day of 2 days awareness program on audit maturity model organized by the Pune branch of WIRC or ICAI in virtual mode. Our speakers today are CA Chandan Lahoti, who is a prolific speaker on Indian accounting standards, Ind AS, IFRS, auditing standards, tax audits at various forums. He is also the director of SRBC and Company LLP for the past 15 years. We also have CA Mohit Khan, who is a partner, Agarwal Khan Motwani and Company, Chartered Accountants, Pune. He is a fellow member of ICAI with over 9 years of experience in internal audit and risk and advisory. And CA Harsh Agarwal is a fellow member of ICAI who has over a decade of experience in handling audits under Ind AS, IFRS and US GAAP. I also welcome CA Samir Ladda sir, Chairman and Treasurer, Pune branch of ICAI, and CA Kashinath Pathare, Vice Chairman and Secretary, Pune ICAI. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, you may please post them on the Q&A panel and we'll address them towards the end. I now request Chairman Sir CA Samir Ladda to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Avanti. Good evening. Today's all speaker, CA Chandan Lahoti, Harsh Agarwal, CA Mohit Dar, and MOC Avanti Gadgi, and all the August audience. Good evening and welcome to second day of this webinar on audit maturity model. And I personally thanks on behalf of all of you, the participants and Pune branch, to all the three speakers to take the jointly sessions on second day also. This is a very new subject. I think first time the institute has introduced this subject audit maturity model this year. And this my three friends, very good speaker, has done a lot of study before giving 2 day sessions, because whenever there are new subjects, extra study required. I know it's very well. And I am Chandan, Harsha and Mohit are always ready for Pune branch to give their extraordinary efforts. So really it is great. Thanks once upon all of you. Some announcements on behalf of Pune branch. All of you know that cricket is going to start on 24th of January next month, and lot of program we have up to the 31st December. We know that all of are busy in the audit and individual returns now. Till there is very good response for this 2 days webinar. It's really great. I think all the participants want to learn what is the new in this audit maturity models. It's always great to learn new things. Wish you all happy learning. Thank you, all of you. Over to Avanti.
Thank you, sir. I now request Chandan sir to please continue with the session. So we had a session yesterday. Sir, please.
Chandanji, you are in mute.
Okay. Is okay. Thanks. Thank you, Avanti. Thank you, Samirji, for first of all allowing us and for having a session. Definitely, as part of our CA, when we became CA, always we wanted that let's give back to institute, let's give back to our fraternity, our CA friends, practicing chartered accountants, so that as a whole, we as a whole we can contribute and provide quality to everyone. So I would just continue from yesterday's. I think so for everyone's interest, if someone has joined today, I just wanted to do a small recap of 15-20 minutes about what we spoke yesterday. And definitely for the ones who were there yesterday, let's do a small recap so that post the recap we can take it further. So overall, I would say we discussed in detail yesterday with regard to the social responsibility as an auditor. What as an auditor we have a social responsibility. I think so. If you remember exactly, I gave an example of our social responsibility. One would say, what is our social responsibility? Whether we keep our city clean, whether we keep our neighborhood clean, whether we keep the rivers clean. As a citizen of India, yes, that's our social responsibility. But as a accountants, as an auditors, as a chartered accountants, what is our social responsibility as an accountant? Our social responsibility as an accountant is to ensure that the financial statement, the audit report, what we sign, can be trusted by the stakeholders. The stakeholders can be an income tax department, can be the shareholders, can be the depositors in case of the banks, and various other cases. So I want to specifically say that we need to know our social responsibility as an auditor, and we need to follow that. Yesterday, we discussed about various reports which are issued by the NAFRA in detail. What are the repercussions? What are the quality, etc. What we see overall, and how we need to improve on that. We discussed that in detail. Definitely, we will share. Institute will share the presentation with you guys after completion of today's session, so that if you have anything on the presentation which you might have missed, you can cover that and you can look into it, and definitely you can contact any of us and we can in detail discuss about any of the items.
Harsh, can you hear me? Okay, thanks. Overall, we discussed about Center of Excellence team, which is set up in Jaipur yesterday, and they had the 3 key agenda items for the COE team. One is to build the capacity in audit, which they are doing it through improving the quality in audits, improving how we can better improve the quality, etc. And second, they do a lot of research. There's a big team which is sitting in the Jaipur and doing a lot of research, so that as an auditor, how we can do things differently, so that the quality financials can be done, and definitely develop practice to help develop audit quality. One of them is definitely AQMM, which is version 1, which we discussed. This version 1 is with regard to specifically when it comes here, this is with regard to version 1, because they plan to make a lot of changes subsequently, and hence it is called as a version 1. Overall, if you remember, yesterday we discussed about whom AQMM would be applicable. Okay, AQMM would be applicable for the company, for the firms or individuals who are auditing the listed company, or banks other than the cooperative banks, except the multi-state cooperative banks, and for the insurance companies to start with. However, firms doing only branch audits would not be covered in year 1, and gradually it would be covered. So overall, if you see, for next 1 year, it would be recommendatory for all of you, all of the firms, to follow the AQMM, and then gradually it would become mandatory. And once it becomes mandatory, you would see the scoring of the firm would be published in the website of the firm. You can, you as a firm, as an individual, can take an audit only once you have basis that level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You can take up the audits. The various criteria were discussed in detail yesterday. When you can be level 1, when you can be level 2, level 3, and level 4. So accordingly, the audit maturity, the maturity of an audit firm, the way it increases, the level increases. So in detail, I think so, Harsh and Mohit discussed yesterday in detail about these 9 key matters. I'll take these matters very quickly today. Overall practice areas of the firm. What are the practice areas of the firm? Overall, firm is looking into it. We discussed that in detail, including statutory audit, internal audit, etc. From a workflow perspective, how what should be the internal manuals, systems, policies has to be placed. We discussed those in detail. Quality review manuals or audit tools. What are the different tools we should have, etc. how the pointing would be done, what would the scoring, etc. We discussed in detail. Service delivery, how we can improve on our service delivery, improve on our quality, etc. We discussed in detail yesterday. Quality control internally, how we can improve. Benchmarking, how we can do benchmarking within the firm, external, etc. On the service delivery, etc. We discussed how to sensitization client that these things can be done on time, these things can't be done on time. We discussed in detail, and accordingly we said the scoring would be done. We discussed on technology adoption. We would be, I think so, Harsh should be taking up some things on the digital in the next slides in detail, and definitely from a revenue, budgeting and pricing, how it can be done, what should be the revenue model, how much we should earn, why we should not go below the revenue costing, etc., budgeting, pricing, etc. We discussed those things in detail. I think so. These were few of the items we discussed yesterday, and I would appreciate that you look into it, the presentation, and see if any additional items you have any queries. Please reach out to us. We would be there to give you further updates on that. That was with regard to what we covered, three of us, between myself, Mohit and Harsh yesterday. And today, these are the few things what we cover before the Q&A. So yesterday we discussed upon project management on an operation level. Today we'll discuss on human resources. What level of people we should have, what pyramid we should have, how many partner to below ratios we should have, how many quality reviews internal we should do. Overall, we will discuss on that. And second is on practice management, strategic, functional, how the firm should be there from an infrastructure perspective, location perspective, hardware, software, digital technology, etc. We'll discuss that in detail, and we will a lot of Q&As between members. We'll keep the session open for anyone. You can just raise your hands, and the institute would definitely will allow you to speak, and we'll answer those questions.
Jagdish wants to talk. We were trying yesterday also.
So at the end, I think so, Jagdish, you can ask a question and we'll address that. Is that okay, Jagdish? Because it's better that in the flow of Q&A we cover those points. Okay. So over to you, Mohit. You can share your screen and start with the human resource management.
Sure. Thanks, Chandan. Just let me set my screen. Can you see my screen? Can you please confirm?
Yeah, we could see.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. Once again, I would like to thank and appreciate ICAI Pune for setting up this session and the audience. So with this, we'll start with the human resource management part of AQMM. So basically, as we are a service industry, and people or resources are the heart of the organization. Though we are moving towards technology, or we are looking at a lot of automations, but without people we cannot work, right? So this whole AQMM, the part 2, which is almost up to 40 marks out of 600, is basically focusing on the HR, human resource, how firm is managing end-to-end life cycle of human resource, right from the talent acquisition to the exit of human resource, how the life journey should be, proper upskilling, trainings, ecosystem, infrastructure, what all is required by human capital to deliver. So there are a few questions that needs to be answered by the firm, and see what is the maturity level of the firm in respect to human resource. Before going to AQMM checklist directly, I would just like to talk about in general what are our experience in terms of human resource in in any audit firm. So what we are looking at, what the objective of AQMM is to get the high quality audit done, right? And so to get an output of high quality audit financial statements, what should be the input? Input is audit professionals, that is availability of audit professional, competency of audit professional, and focus of audit professional. I think this is very important that any firm to achieve the quality output of audit quality should have as an input the availability of right kind of people, right number of people, right kind of people which are competent enough to take care of those assignments, and very important that they are focused, right? How they can be focused is if they are taken care of by providing them a right kind of ecosystem, right kind of infrastructure, I would say right kind of trainings, where they are taken care of for their well-being, so they can focus. So this is an input, and then there is a process of how the leadership tone at the top about from the execution point of view. What are the incentives for them if they are properly executing and performing? Are they independent in infrastructure monitoring? So with these inputs processing, and we get a result which is a high quality audit. So now we'll discuss about few challenges which all of us are aware about and we face on day-to-day basis. So what are the human capital challenges of auditing firm? So the first of thing, difficult to recruit and retain the talent. So if you see that whenever you interview people or any fresher or someone, he says that I don't want to go into a CA firm or an audit firm, right? So this is a first reaction of any chartered accountant. I'm not saying that they don't want to join, but most of them have the same opinion, right? What are the reasons behind those challenges or those reservations of of the employees to join us auditing firm? First and foremost, which all of us will agree, is a history of long working hours. So we work on weekends, we work on late nights, depending on because we have to adhere to the timelines of the government clients, and we mostly work overtime. We work for the long working hours, which I think at a stage where people don't want to work because there is no balance and there's no productivity also because of the long so this is the first challenge, and which I think practically every one of us face. Then second is high employee turnover rates. So there is always attrition. You employ someone, you train them, and within 6 months people are ready to move out. So that is because of all those reasons, and the good staff also moves out because his team is moving out very frequently. So that is a high employee turnover rates is another challenge. And third is employee well-being, right? Employee satisfaction and work-life balance. See, it is a very subjective kind of thing where what will constitute employee satisfaction or what is the work-life balance. But I think you would also see that there are a lot of CA firms still, even in spite of COVID phase 2, phase 1, and so there has been no ecosystem where people can work from home, right? Still there was no infrastructure, so people want to work from home, but these offices were not well equipped where they can have the functioning without coming to office. So this is again employee well-being. Are we taking care of employees from the health point of view, from employee satisfaction point of view, and work-life balance? So I think these are the main challenges that we are facing today to recruit the right kind of talent in auditing firms and retain them. So I was reading a very interesting survey, so I thought of sharing with you all. The basic 3 questions from the HR side of auditing firm. First is, what do audit employee think of their employers, right? What they think, are they satisfied, or they are happy, they are not happy? What they think, what is their life, work-life balance? do they love to work with your firm or they are not happy? So there was a survey which I'll present in the next few slides about what was the rating. There was a survey which was done from the various auditing firms, and there are results, what they feel about the working in any on the audit firm. Second is what determines the employee satisfaction in audit firm. Okay, we talk about employee satisfaction, but what are the parameters? What a firm should do, right, to achieve employee satisfaction? So that is another question. So the composition of in this survey, the composition was career opportunities, right? They look for a career opportunity. Okay, today I'm working hard, and it's a unsaid, accepted by the resources or human capital in audit firm that okay, we are ready to work overtime, and maybe this industry needs that. But do we have career opportunities going forward, right? If you are working hard today, is there a scope or headroom where we have a career opportunities? What is a tone at the top, right? Is the senior management supportive? Are they willing to promote the people, or there's a negative politics? How what is the behavior of senior management? Composition and benefits. Obviously, what is a composition where compensation and the benefits, whether it is at par with industry, whether the person who is working hard or maybe are delivering more is getting any variable incentives. Work-life balance, is there any work-life balance working with the firm, and culture. So these are the major, in this survey, it was seen that these are the factors or parameters, I would say, which any candidate or any resource or human capital looks at. Third is employee satisfaction and work-life balance linked with the audit quality? Definitely, if someone is satisfied in the way of ecosystem that is being provided to him, he is trained well, he is paid well, the ecosystem technology is provided, and he knows that there is a growth. Definitely, I think, and even this survey says that the employee satisfaction and work-life balance is linked with the audit quality, and it improves audit quality. Now let's get to numbers, because being chartered accountants, we love to see numbers and analysis, and then only it helps us to understand better. So if we see about this five, so based on this, I've taken a relevant extract of this survey which was done in the audit firms. So the classification was done in two parts: big firms and small firms. So more or less, I think it's same except for the work-life balance. So let's see overall rating. Out of 5-star rating, the people working in big firms has overall rating as 3.6, and small size firms has 3.42. So small variation of 5%. So the overall rating is same. Compensation is little higher in the big firms than the small firms. Career opportunities little slightly higher in the big firms than the small firms. Senior management more supportive in the big firms. But if you see the work-life balance, I think this survey says that work-life balance is more in the small firms than the big firms. And culture is 3.1 in the big firm because it's little open culture, and then the small firm. So this is the the survey which states how the rating has been done by the audit resources. Those are in big firms and small firms. Now coming next to the exploring overall satisfaction, right? So in these 5 parameters, when we talk about compensation, work-life balance, senior management, that is top management, career opportunities, and culture and values. So what percentage is being looked by the resources, and how this parameter is measured? So this survey says that if any employee is joining any audit firm, it gives most important to first 2 part, that is culture and the value of the firms, whether the integrity culture, whether it's understanding culture, whether they have a human touch in the organization, what is a culture, whether they have aspiration to grow. Then it talks about the career opportunities, right? So almost 26% of the all parameters, people see that if there is a career opportunities, they are ready to join. Then support of the senior management. So if you see these 3 parts, why I'm discussing this is that we talk about employee satisfaction, but somewhere we have to figure out what exactly we are looking at, what people look for when they are joining your firm as in the audit firm. So this survey states that culture is something is very important, culture, values of your firm. Then it talks about the values also covers, whether the firm is transparent enough, whether the right people are being given the promotions and all those things, right? Then the career opportunities, do they have a growth opportunity with your firm? Then it comes the senior management support, and then it comes the compensation and the work-life balance. So out of the total parameter, 14%, 13 to 14% is on the compensation and benefits. Though if the survey says that people are ready to compromise little bit on the compensation and also the work-life balance, if the firm is clean, have a right culture and values, career opportunities are there, and senior management is supportive. So this is, interesting insights. Now, third is employee satisfaction and work-life balance linked with the audit quality? Definitely, work-life balance is as important as the compensation. And if highly satisfied or work-life balance of an auditor will definitely improve the audit quality. So I think if these parameters are taken care by the organization, definitely it has to be a balanced approach between the firm and the the resources or the auditors. But if these are taken care, definitely we'll be able to improve the high quality standards of audit. Now, before getting to the AQMM, questions, I would like to also discuss about what are the new capabilities we need to approach or we need to learn, right, to be able to audit in this emerging new technology era. So I think technical is the basic. We need to have technical trainings from time to time, but the soft skills are also very important, because now if you see that the communication, it's mainly online communication, it's communication through emails rather than just sitting with the client and getting the query. So the communication has a huge importance in concluding the audit and doing a quality audit in a right way, because you interact so much with client. Because of the complex nature of the business, you interact more with the client nowadays, and with the agile mode of the audit, the communication has increased. So I think it helps you to even execute the right, put in your point in a right perspective to the client, to increase the business, to get the new clients. So technical and soft skills are important. Then continuously training and upskilling is very important, right? So the new skills, when we talk about the new skills apart from the technical, our CA skills is basically agile. As I discussed, it's now the instead of doing assignment and concluding in one shot, the assignments are broken into a small crunches and more interaction with the clients. Agile, data scientist, cyber security, data analytics, design thinking, cloud. So these are some, initially it used to be for people who wants to go into tech side of the practice, but currently, even if you're doing a normal practice and auditing, you need to understand and upskill yourself with these skills. Then we see that there is a trend of rotation, right? Team rotates to the business. It means that we are moving towards business. So to do audit today, we need to understand the business, right? Because it is so complex that before getting into audit, you need to understand the business. It's not only about the trial balance, getting the trial balance, doing the audit, to understand the business, what exactly the risk areas are. So we are moving from the audit side towards the business in understanding the business, and auditors are moving towards the business audit side. Sorry, business is moving towards the audit side. Why I say so? Because if you see that now with the ERP, there are a lot of bots. There's a real-time auditing systems that has been implemented, with various ERPs. So it was a role of an auditor, which is done by the technology, and client implements it, and they are putting in a checks and balances in terms of audit in the system itself. So business is also rotating towards the audit. So with this background, I would come to AQMM section 2, human resource management, right? So this there are three parts, which yesterday we covered. One part that is operation, second part is human resource management, and third part is strategic function, right? So I will be covering second human resource, and then Harsh will be covering practice management strategic function. So this HR is as important as operations, carries 240 marks and is divided into 5 major categories. So first talks about the resource planning and monitoring as per the firm's policy. Second talks about the employee training and development. Third talk about resource turnover and compensation management. 2.4 about the skill set of the employee and use of the experts. And 2.5 basically the KPIs, key performance indicators, evaluation of the firm and the partners. So go to 2.1, I will discuss in detail. So 2.1 resource planning and monitoring as per the firm's policy. So it's very important if you want to deliver it's very well said that the well planned work is half done. So if it is planned well, it is considered as half done. So same way, it's important that we know what skill set we have, which resource should be assigned, which assignment, so that there is a clear-cut skill matrix we have, which is mapped to the assignments we have, and then we track, right? We plan the work and we track. So if any firm has a proper skill matrix of the firm, and they plan and they take care of the skill matrix wise resource planning, they allocate the work basis the skill matrix using any Excel sheet or tool, and they track the work of the employee. So if these activities are tracked, they follow the skill matrix, and they have tools to allocate tools in the sense that they have a process to allocate the assignment based on the skill matrix, then there are 4 marks for the firm, otherwise it's 0. I think we all are doing this today. The only part in AQMM is that we need to document this. We need to document it. We need to have a template. We need to have a policy. We need to have a skill matrix of all our resources and document it so that it can be verified when third party is checking the same. It also talks about the various ratios that a firm should have, right? What a firm should maintain. See, we love to play with numbers, ratios, analysis, but very few of us do an internal analysis that what is a ratio of staff to partner, what is a ratio of manager to partner, what are the ratio of, or what should be the ratio of articles to manager or partner, right? So these ratios, not only from AQMM point of view, but also this helps us to understand whether the partner is underutilized, overutilized, or any manager is underutilized, so that the work can be allocated accordingly. So it's very important to maintain that minimum staff to partner ratio, that there should be minimum. So AQMM is recommending that you should have minimum this number of people reporting to the partner, reporting to the managers, articles and all. If you have this mechanism, you get 8 marks. Does the firm monitor the utilization and realization rate per employee? So what is utilization? That is the total number of hours available to use, right? So total number of hours which is available to you is available for utilization, and realization is that out of this total number of hours which is available to you of your team, how much is being utilized and realized in any assignment. So that is basically a realization. So if we have a process of total available hours and what is being realized, if you are monitoring as a firm, if you're monitoring that, you get 4 marks, otherwise it's 0. Does the firm document the resource plan for each engagement? Again, it is linked with the point we discussed, that any assignment broken into different parts, how many resources will be required, who will be engaged at what time. This all is a part of planning the engagement. So whether the firm has this system or standard template to plan the resources for the engagement, if yes, you get 4 marks, otherwise you get 0 marks. So as I mentioned, we are doing all this, but the only thing is that we have to start documenting. For the reference, I have just got again one survey which is done by BDO UK for the top 6 firms in UK about what is the total ratio of partners to staff. How it is calculated is total staff divided by number of total staff employed divided by number of partners. So if you see PwC, it has in UK it has 24.6. So one partner has average 24.6 staff. Van Thornton 23, KPMG 23. So it is in the range between 19 to let's say 24 or 25. Now we need to assess and see that as a partner, how many staff I have, right? If you have 10 partners and you have 100 staff, your ratio is 10 per partner. So is it less? It is low. It might change basis the nature of the assignments. If it is a complex assignment or it is a the area of practice you are in. But I think it's very mindful to see that what is the ratio. It helps you to upgrade the firm, to reduce the cost, and also to optimize the resources you have. Now 2.2 is basically on the employee trainings. It talks about, does the firm has a training policy? And I think this is must right now, where firms without training, it's very difficult to get executed the new assignments or the challenging assignment which is coming up. So does the firm has a training policy? If yes, you get 4 marks. If no, then 0. Policy should have a very detailed steps, that what should be the frequency of audit, how many hours, which kind of training, whether it is a basic training or a specialized training, soft skills, technical and all. So that frequency needs to be decided. For juniors, it is 60 hours. If you have 60 hours or plus per junior, then you get 2 marks for the general training and 6 points for the specialized training. So that's how there's a benchmarking and scaling of the points. So you need to have a training policy, and then frequency needs to be set according to the designation of the people. And also you need to see that whether that training is on the technical, specialized, and also the general, right? Maybe soft skills. So again, continuing on the training, third is whether the employees are equipped with a technology skill set. As we discussed in detail, and I think it will be covered in detail by Harsh also, that how technology will help, right, to do an audit. And if we don't have the skill set to use this technology, I think we'll be left behind. Today, without technology, it's very difficult to do audit and deliver the quality of any assignment. Let it be internal audit, let it be statutory audit. There are a lot of analysis. We have come back to the basics, where we want to do 100% check, and which is possible only through the technology. So whether the employees are equipped with the technical skill set and they're upgraded from time to time to use the tools, data analytics tools or AI tools, blockchain audits, etc. So if there is a policy, then firms get 8 points, otherwise it's 0. Then performance management culture. So what AQMM suggests is that firms should have a performance management culture, where the performance criteria should be identified, it should be reviewed, it should not be subjective, it should be objective with the criteria to be defined, and the performance should be measured for the people, and they should be rewarded. If they are performing good, the employees, then they should be rewarded. So if that is a process, then you get 8 points, otherwise there is 0 points. Resources turnover and compensation management. So basically this talks about the composition of overall team strength, right? So number of managers, assistant manager, paid staff, articles. So what is the constitution of overall team strength, right? Again, somewhere linked to those ratio that we talk about. And does the firm monitor the employee turnover ratio? Right. So if the employees are leaving again and again, so what is let's say for example, the average standard attrition rate is 11% in the industry. So what is the ratio of the firm? Whether it is 11, it is 8, or it is 15. And to minimize it, what are the measures that firm should take? So if that process is in place, the firms get 8 points, otherwise, they get 0 point. And then also there is a marking on the qualified professional retained by the firm. So basically that is the resource that is available to the partners. So if you have 4 to 5 employees, you get 8 points. If you have 10 and above, you get 20 points. Resources turnover and compensation. So if you see that this AQMM has a very detailed point-wise marking system from the human resource management point of view, because each and if you see that each and every point you would see is relevant, let it be a small size firm or a medium size firm. If you need to have a team which delivers the quality, I think this is very important to implement at each stage. Then they talk about the employee relationship with the firm. How many employees are staying for, let's say, more than X number of years? Whether the statutory contributions, whatever applicable, is taken care by the firm. Whether there is a health insurance, other benefit applicable, to the firms and members and partners. So this is again, if you have PF, ESIC, whether all the statutory requirements are taken care, health insurance is being taken care, or what other benefits is being given to the firm. So if these all statutory compliance are taken care, the firm get 8 marks. Does the firm evaluate for which kind of audit? Does it have a revolving door? Revolving door in context of audit means that people who are leaving, right? Leaving again and again. Let's say you have any audits where people are coming and they are going, right? So is that kind of audit or assignment being taken care by firm at partner level? Is it being reviewed? Is it that because of change of the people, the quality is compromised, or due to the assignment, the people are leaving the job? So that if there is case like this, then it has to be reviewed and documented. And there is 4 points if there's a mechanism to evaluate such kind of audits. Then there is basically progress of, so basically, is there a methodology where the partners and managers are being reviewed, right, for, let's say, delivery on time, for various other parameters? Are they technically updated? So is there any policy which keep on reviewing that the framework that you have is upskilling themselves, are delivering on time? If yes, if these 3 points are covered, then yes, you get 8 marks, otherwise you get 0 marks. So does the access, what is your, as a firm, what is the infrastructure, technology infrastructure one has? So access and use of the technology infrastructure, methodology for enabling day-to-day work, including favorable remote working policy. So as we discussed, in this, especially in this COVID era, this work from home policy is very important. I think Institute has also come up with those guidelines, and I think it's a need of an hour, because it also helps, it keeps a balanced approach, and it also helps reduce the infrastructure cost and make us more competitive. So are there coaching and mentoring being done, especially for the women colleagues, to enhance the diversity of the audit leaders in the profession? So do we have a training program, especially for women member, so that there is a equality in the firm? Then it talks about policies for, does firms give, there is a special policy to provide people time to rejuvenate, especially after the busy session. So let's say after the tax audit, or if there is any due diligence assignment which is going on for a couple of months, after that, do we give time to team to take rest? See, I think, while reviewing the policies of various MNCs, we saw that there's a compulsory leave policy, right? So do we have that policy? So it helps in both ways. One is where firm gives a leave to the people, right, and understand that, okay, are we concentrated or we dependent on those set of employees? So when the firm is giving leave or this kind of holidays to team, it helps from both point of view. One, the team is rejuvenated and come fresh for the next assignment, and also firm can review whether we are dependent on any specific people or any part of or set of people. Focused policy that supports staff well-being, engagement, and communication. So is it that we value people well-being, their health, right? Engagements, and also that there is someone who can communicate with them very clearly. Is there a very clear-cut SOP for the communication, and that is employees are being listened for? Then there is any mechanism where there is a feedback policy, or where the surveys are being taken from the employees from, let's say, infrastructure point of view, from any new policy which someone has implemented. So is there any policy or feedback system? Is there a two-way communication system between the management and the employees, so that there's a comfortable ecosystem for the employees to work? See, ultimately, what is the objective? Ultimately, objective is to get a better quality. And this all we are doing is, once the ecosystem is there, once the framework is clean, everyone is happy with what they should have, and definitely then the audit quality is the end result. That is bound to come, right? So that's why each and every parameters of the parameters is taken. It's not only one-sided that we are talking about employees, but if you had seen the earlier point, it's also talk about tracking of the employees' activities, setting up the KPI. So we are very clear that what is our expectation from the people, right? Setting up the expectation is I think one of the foremost thing that we should do. And once this is done in the planning phase, in the KPI setting phase, then we need to see that have we provided a proper infrastructure and training to the team so that they can deliver the best. And AQMM has given a ranking, or I would say points, for each facility that we are providing. Resource turnover, again, it talks about what is the recruitment process, right? What is the assessment process? It's very important, and I would say hard to get a right kind of resource for at a right place. So what is your assessment model? So after we have selected any candidate, after 3 months, we say the candidate is not performing, or we are not getting the desired result. So there is a possibility that there is some misunderstanding, but is it a general practice that after appointment and after 3 months, your team come and say, sir, that person is not working right? So if that is the case, go back and visit your assessment methodology. Are we recruiting the people in the right way? Are we getting do we have a right quality system, evaluation system, and the fitment of people? If yes, if you have that, then you have 4 points, otherwise it's nil. The next point is what is a firm compensation policy, right? So whether the salary is mapped with the knowledge and experience. Do we have a salary bar, or that okay, with 2 years experience in internal audit or a stat audit, we have a salary from X to Y, right? Because it will, if there is a lot of fluctuation in two people who have a same kind of knowledge, same year of experience, and if it is too much experience, definitely it will bring the dissatisfaction. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be someone can be outperformer, but there has to be some standards to evaluate and give, so that there is no dissatisfaction between the employees. So if you have that policy, the maximum points that you can get is 4. Then it talks about the qualification skill set of an employee and use of the experts, right? So how many professional team you have? Out of your professional team, how many of them are ACA or FCA? If let's say you have 30%, if you have 10 people team, any partner has 10 people team and 30% of them are ACA or FCA, you get 4 points. If you have more than 50% as FCA or ACA, you get 12 points. There are additional points if there are post-qualification certifications done by the partners, if it is done by the members, about ICI post-qualification courses are done, or any international courses are done, and the CP requirements of ICI are complied with, then there are additional 8 points which can be fetched by the firm. Qualification skill of employee, and so it continues. Basically, the member specialized, as we discussed, that if they have IFRS. So one is that courses which is issued by ICI, CPRs, and then if there is accreditation requirement and which is done by the team, you get additional points. So let's say if 3 out of 10 people have done this certifications, you get 4 additional points. Now coming to the 2.5, which is the last point of human resource, it says that performance evaluation measure carried out by the firm. So it says that the firm should have their own KPIs, and with the firm's KPIs and KRAs, it should then a firm should also have the KPIs and KRAs of the partner and subsequently the team as well. I think it is very important to know that where we want to head, are we going in the right direction, and to monitor that. So it helps us to be very objective, and it helps firm also to grow in the right direction. So 2.5 carries almost 32 marks, which talks about these 4 points, where it says that does the firm have written KPIs for performance evaluation of the firm and the partners. I think very important, though the big firms, or I would say, yes, the big firms will have this, but mid-size and small firms don't have the KPIs or of the firms and the partners, right? Because it is like a ownership of the partner and he's the boss. So basically, it's very important to document where the firm we want to take ahead the firm and also the partners. Then there should be a method of evaluation of these KPIs. So it should not be subjective. It should be very objective with a defined process how this can be calculated. Let's say if we talk about that revenue, right? So this will be the revenue we are going to achieve this revenue. So how much percent growth in which sector? Are we talking about increase in the number of people? Then which department will have this number of people? So very objective. If we want to reduce the percentage of error, let's say in filing of ITR, last time we had almost 5% of the clients came back and told that this is an error. Now we want to reduce it to, let's say, 1%. So how it will be counted, how it will be measured, what exactly the objective is, should be very clearly defined. Frequency of evaluation needs to be discussed, whether this will be reviewed quarterly, monthly, or yearly. And are the engagement partners reviewed based on the review results of the engagement of each partner? So are the partners also reviewed based on their performance, and the roadmap is being set for the improvements even for the partners. So if this ecosystem is there, the firm get 8 points, right? So basically with this I covered HR, which was human resource, which had which was covering 240 points, and happy to take any questions. I think we have a Q&A session post around 7:30 post. Harsh has covered his part, that is third part. Back to Harsh.
Thanks, Mohit, to cover the HR function in a wonderful manner in terms of explaining the participants in terms of what is exactly required and how we can do things differently. I think we have a couple of team participants who have raised their hands. Maybe can we allow them to talk now?
Not sure.
The question answer session was supposed to be at the end, but if you're comfortable, we can.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if, because Jagdish ji was trying to raise hand a couple of times earlier as well. So Jagdish ji, we'll try to unmute you. And can we unmute Jagdish ji?
I don't have
Jagdish
the
sir,
right
please unmute and then you can talk.
Same problem yesterday also.
Yeah, I think
That's fine. I think so.
yeah, we can continue. And
Jagdish
then-
ji, if you can.
I think it's by mistake, sir.
Okay, no problem. If Jagdish ji, if still you want to ask something, you can use the chat box, the function to Q&A section to check. So, okay, maybe I'll start. Allow me a minute to start the presentation. Just let me know if the screen is visible.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes. So again, thanks for this opportunity, and this is the last section of the EQMM, or the third one, which deals with practice management about the strategic and functional aspects, and we will see how the mechanism is there for the pointing in this section. Before I start, maybe I'll just give a background in terms of like we saw what is the overall scheme of things, and I relate my discussion to the audit universe that we were discussing yesterday, in terms of when an audit firm or an auditor needs to create an entire ecosystem in such a way that everything will finally lead to a better audit and a better quality audit finally, and the society at large will benefit from such fantastic audits that we would deliver as professionals. So, like I said, this section will cover mostly about certain aspects about the firm as such, how the practice is, what is the number of partners, what is the average age of the partners in terms of how experienced are they in terms of taking certain decisions, judgments during the course of the audit. It also deals with the overall size and capacity of the firm in terms of what are the number of branches, what are the facilities available, from an infrastructure perspective, how is the internet connectivity, VPN, etc. How are the IT systems designed in the firm in terms of taking care of security, logical access, and things like that. And finally, in the third point, we have a scoring mechanism for the credentials in terms of a peer review certificate or any other empanelment from a CAG office or things like that. And we also have a couple of questions in terms of where there are negative markings here, in terms of if there is any if the firm is rated negatively through any government body or ICI, or if there is any disciplinary action which has been taken against the firm, then obviously there are certain aspects where there are negative markings as well. So overall 80 points can be fetched if this section has been taken care appropriately by respective audit firms. And maybe we can start with the specific one in terms of the first point here deals with the mix of experience of the audit partners. So here it talks about what is the mix of the experience of the audit partners in the firm. For example, if the average experience is more than 10 years, then a maximum of 8 points can be fetched. And if the experience is, say, let's say maybe less than 5, so 4 points can be totally allocated for this point. So basically they are saying that the firm should have a mix of both junior as well as senior partners. While gray hair definitely helps in terms of the number of years of experience while taking decisions, but at the same time we should have young blood as well in terms of having an encouragement of newer aspects. There are a lot of things which are coming up new, the way you deal with data, the way you deal with newer aspects of data analysis and things like that. So basically there should be a mix of both is what they are saying. This point deals with the code of ethics. So if the firm is compliant with the code of ethics of ICAI, if the firm is compliant with Companies Act 2013 and other regulatory requirements in relation to independence, and if there are no conflict of interest, again a maximum of 8 points can be fetched for this area. Obviously 0 points if there are any issues from an independence perspective. So we were discussing about independence yesterday as well, in terms of there were certain questions in the section 1 also, where how the firm is tracking about independence and things like that. So like we were discussing yesterday, independence is something which is most crucial aspect of being an auditor, and most crucial aspect where unbiased opinion will definitely come if the CA firm and it's all the employees, partners, etc. are compliant from an independence perspective. And obviously, we all know that there should not be any conflict of interest in terms of whenever we are taking any decisions in the course of our audit. So this is very important and crucial. Hence, there is a pointing of 8 points which is available in this section. This is interesting in terms of whistleblower. So maybe I'll take 2 minutes to discuss what a whistleblower policy generally is. And here they are talking about a policy where people can freely raise their voice. So generally whistleblower policies are those where there is an anonymous, any employee or anyone in the organization can make an anonymous complaint or raise his or her voice if he or she believes that something is going wrong or something which is not ethical and things like that. So the CFM should have a formal policy in terms of a whistleblowing mechanism where employees, managers, staff, interns, and even other partners for that matter should be allowed to raise their concerns if they feel that something is not going in the right direction. If a policy is maintained, 4 points can be fetched. And we have seen this in our audit clients also, whenever we are doing listed accounts. We have seen that we also discuss this with our audit clients, or companies where they maintain the whistleblower policy. So this, I think, is very crucial. I've seen many independent agencies also providing such services, which deals with the whistleblower, and they maintain their independence in terms of, and even they try to keep it the secrecy, and knowing the context here, they will try to sensitize the matter in such a way that if there are any whistleblower complaints or if there are any matters which are reported in the whistleblower, then this should be appropriately dealt with by the CFM. I think very important and crucial. The next area is about the overall infrastructure of the CFM in terms of what is the capacity, what is the size. So this point talks about number of branches and associations with the network firms and its affiliates that the CFM has. So for example, again, there is a matrix given here. So for example, if there are say more than 15 branches or 15 associations within the CFM or a network of firms, then a maximum of 8 points can be fetched from this point. Again, if there are lesser branches, say 8 to 15 branches, then 6 points, followed by if there are less than 7, so you get 4 or 2 points respectively. So they're not emphasizing on the size as such, but having a number of association obviously increases the capacity and also increases the ability of a firm to handle large audits. And we have seen that certain, when we were discussing about the scope of AQMM, certain listed companies, banks, again, we know we're doing bank audits. Some banks are really huge in terms of the infrastructure, the number of the nature and size and scale at which they operate. So they're saying that if you are having, the CFM should also have enough capacity and bandwidth in that shape or form to handle big audits. So hence they are having a scoring mechanism for the number of branches here. The next point deals about the activities at branch. So for example, they are saying if are the activities decentralized or centralized. So again, if the activities are centralized, it means that there's enough coordination and there's enough mechanism in place to have various activities within the firm and within all branches. So for this coordinated effort, they're saying if the branches are centralized, again, you get 8 points. And this centralization would be in the area of accounting, invoicing, payroll, and various other administrative activities which any firm needs to handle. Again, a decentralized setup will get 4 points. Moving ahead, the next point covers the security. Now here, security means not only physical, but also logical security, which means that the data that you are handling, the data of the CF firm, the audit work papers, we are also having client confidential data, which we generally take during the course of our audit. So how is this protected? What are the various measures which the CA firm has adopted to have those logical security accesses? It can be a network, it can be through various logical accesses where various password protection, firewalls, etc., can be used within the firm. We have seen certain firms using VPN access, which is given to employees, wherein the internal intranet within the firm is only allowed to be accessed by the employees, and thus this will support even more enhanced ways of working in these virtual times, where we are mostly using different systems, different platforms, and audit is happening in a virtual environment. So this becomes more critical and more imperative in terms of having good security measures to protect the data that we are handling. Again, 8 points if the security measures are good within the firm. The next point deals about the data analytic tools and the IT infrastructure, which has been used by the firm and which are currently assigned on the audit engagement. So typically they are saying with these in these times where we have big data, and we have seen some of the companies using advanced ERP modules and advanced ERP platforms, where the concept of going through a paperless office has now slowly and steadily becoming a reality. So in this world where the client is also using say robotic process automations to do their own activities, they are relying on the system to a large extent. So we as auditors also need to scale up and to handle big data in terms of where there are voluminous transactions. So we should adopt adequate data analytics in terms of audit to enable us not to restrict the audit to a particular sample, for example. So if we are using a data analytics, we are using the entire population for our analysis, and through this, then maybe we are not only restricting our audit to the traditional way of auditing by only auditing certain samples, but when you are doing a data analytics on the entire data. So for example, we have seen certain tools which use the entire journal entry population of the client to do certain analysis, and that really helps to get an overall idea of how the entries are passed, what is the scheme of entries. We can select some significant risk accounts in the financial statements, say revenue or maybe some other critical item, depending on the nature of the industry where you're auditing. And these DA tools can be used to perform a better audit. So again, the AQMM model is suggesting that if there are adequate tools, various IT infrastructure, such as in the form of tools, if tools are not available, maybe certain advanced functionalities in the Excel spreadsheets can be used. And if we are trying to adopt a data analytics driven audit, then 12 points can be accumulated from this section. Moving ahead in the infrastructure space, adequacy in terms of internet, intranet network, or how is the bandwidth? We were discussing about the VPN. A VPN network allows the employees of the firm to connect to a logical intranet of the firm where certain firm related matters. And obviously we were discussing certain items yesterday, such as the standard tools, the standard checklist which auditor needs to have. So such accesses can give access to the employees to the specific data, which is intellectual property for the audit firm. So if the firm is having that infrastructure, then they're giving 12 points here again. And again, with these, COVID has taught us in last, whatever, 1.5, 2 years, what is the importance of remote working. And we all have worked in the remote environment in certain, at a particular point of time where no one had an option but to work remotely due to the COVID protocols, etc. So if the firm is scaled up in terms of IT infrastructure, then 12 points can be fetched. from this section. Okay. 3.3 deals with the practice credentials, and here is where these are pretty straightforward questions in terms of if the peer review certificate is available, then you get a 4 points. And similarly, if you have an empanelment with RBI and in the CAG office, again 8 points can be accumulated. So basically, having an empanelment with RBI, having a peer review certificate already has certain level of comfort and certain level of the methods, policies which the firm is already adopting. So this mechanism of AQMM already have specified certain scores and points here, which existing firms can go for. Then there are certain questions which have negative marking, and this is the first one, wherein if there is a advisory, so any negative comment or any negative aspect on the CA form will give you -5. And here it talks about an advisory as well as a decision which is taken by the CAG office for any unsatisfactory performance, or any, if they have taken a decision that work cannot be allocated to a particular firm, then -5 point will be allocated in the overall scale. So this will overall reduce the total score which the CA firm has accumulated so far by answering the earlier questions and the earlier sections here. So again, a dangerous one. This is even more dangerous, -10 points, where any government body or any authority has blacklisted or the CA firm is debarred from certain activities. So then this will give you a -10 points. Pretty straightforward. Again, if there is any negative assessment in any of the QRB reports on the firm, this will give you a -5 points. So here there need to be certain clarity, and again we discussed that AQMM is a new aspect which has come up very recently, and time only can help us to get more matured and gain more understanding on certain practical aspects. So here maybe a question can arise that which year should be referred to from a negative format in last 3 questions. So for example, if there was an unsatisfactory order, say 10 years back on a firm, can reference be point out to that? So there is a clarity, certain aspects will require clarity from the institute, and maybe we request the institute, and obviously this will progress as things will become matured. So whether we should see last 1 year for such assessments and reports, whether we should see last 3 years, these are certain questions that we had in mind, but sooner or later this will get clarified once it is implemented in the full capacity, and it will get a matured discussion. Again, professional misconduct on the firm or any of the partners, so that will give you a negative marking of -5 if any of the firm or the member has been proven guilty by ICAI Code of Ethics and Conduct. I think that concludes section 3, where 80 points can be accumulated, and maybe we can open the house for any questions, any discussion, any queries that other members and other participants have in the AQMM module.
I think so. Majority of the things we have closed now from a presentation perspective. If anyone has any questions, would request you to put in the Q&A or the chat box so that we can address those questions.
Sir, I can see only one question. It's not exactly a question, but so Yusuf Sarai has expressed a concern. So I'll just read out. I didn't get the question, so if you can address it, please. My son is working in one Big Four firm for making him work for long hours, which has affected him in not able to give enough time to prepare for CA final exam. So I didn't understand the question here. So Mr. Yusuf, if you can unmute and please ask your query.
So I think, ma'am, this is not relevant to the topic because
Yeah.
one-on-one understanding between the article and the form.
Right.
But I don't think we'll be able to comment on that. That part.
Yeah. So Gautamji, you have a question. You can unmute yourself and give the question, or you can put in the chat box and we will address that. Gautamji, you want to put that in the chat box? Okay. Until we have any questions from someone in the chat box, I thought I have one or two questions, which I think so. Let's see. So Mohit, I was just thinking differently. I don't know whether that would have been a good question from the participant itself. But what do you believe? What should be a roadmap for a firm to adopt EQMM? Can you just explain that so that it would be good for the participants to know about it?
Yeah, sure. Chandan, I think that's the next phase where after doing this session, the next one is okay, this is okay, but how to go about it? I think that's a very valid question. I think, Chandan, the main thing is the mindset, right? First, we need to have that mindset. Are we ready to change, come into this ecosystem? Because a small and mid-sized firms, as I mentioned yesterday also, we overdo the audit, but we lack in documentation, we lack in setting up their own processes. Now the time and onus is on also the audit firms to prove that yes, we are competent, we have internal controls within our organization, and we can handle the assignment in a right way. So I think first and foremost is to set a tone at the top, at the leadership team, at a partner level. Doesn't matter how big the firm is, maybe 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, whatever, but to have a mindset that yes, the business is changing, the ecosystems are changing, we will have to change ourselves. We'll have to change ourselves to match with the requirement. Otherwise, I think we will be out of the market or the business, I would say, as a practice. So first is the mindset that yes, we want to change. And I think if that is done, then I would say more than 50% of that work is already done. So first is the mindset. Second, I would say that go to the basics before, if you think that, okay. And after that, once the mindset is done, you only the serious players, as I understand from, after having a detailed reading on EQMM and also discussing with various committee members, we understand that only serious players on the audit will be able to survive, right? Because this is recommendatory as of now. Going forward, it will be compulsory. Currently, it is for the limited set of audits. And later on, it will be also applicable for other, second phase and third phase will also going to come. So first is mindset. Second is to decide your area of practice, whether you want to be in audit, right? If you're having 2 clients of any big entities or just a very limited audits, I think it will be difficult for someone to manage this EQMM, the complete checklist, which is going to be more complicated and exhaustive going forward. So first is to prepare the mindset. Second is to understand that where the firm wants to head, like KRAs and KPIs, which area you want to go about. And third, if you feel that yes, we have a mindset, we want to have an audit practice, then you have to go to the basics. Basics, when I say, is in my yesterday's session, I covered various standards, professional standards that are being applicable even as we talk now, irrespective of the size of firm or whom you are auditing. Every chartered accountant has to comply with standards of auditing, standard of reviews, related service standards on an SQC1, right? So this is applicable right now to everyone. So we should go to the basics. We should go to the basics and see that are we complying these standards. are we, in the, do we have documentation to basically record if we are following that? So first go to the basic, go to DCMM, digital competency maturity model, go to SQC1, standards which are applicable, auditing standards, assurance standards, and then implement that. And I think once the firm has implemented the basic this thing with a basic technology, then it's easier for firm to evaluate themselves and see where they belong. So I think this is from my point of view. Harsh, Chandan, if you would like to add anything on this.
No, I think so. You covered overall perspective for the smaller and the medium-sized firms, what they need to keep in mind, what is required, etc. I think so. That's well covered.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of mindset change is what is very critical, and that will be the driver going forward.
Okay. Mohit, you have anything? What something need to be covered in addition?
I think, Harsh being an expert in audit and use various tools. So, Harsh, I would like to understand, like, what should be the roadmap from the small and medium practicing chartered accountants? Let's say today we are at day 0 and the firm wants to start adopting for the technology, the tools, being, involved in this technology part. What you suggest that firm should, how they should go about?
That's a very interesting and most valid question these days. And maybe I can bring up certain experience that I carry, and maybe I can flash back 4 to 5 years where we had only read when we were reading the books of auditing in terms of computer aided tools and techniques and many big words. But when it came to practice, actually, we used to do various things on a traditional manner. In terms of, when I mean traditional manner, we see a lot of vouchers. We used to see a lot of ticking tie. But obviously, as things evolved and as things came up to life, and even from the audit client side, we have seen certain organizations and certain audit clients growing multifold in the last say 10 to 12 years. And so anything which is a change, and maybe this is a human mindset, anything that requires a change is a first gets criticism from the market. Okay, you can take bank stories where nationalization was happening, or you can take 20-year stories where there was many nationalized banks forced employees who were basically doing many various manual things, or forced to use computers in the first place. So there was a lot of criticism. But today, if someone can imagine, if a big organization or a big nationalized or a bank having multiple transaction, multiple account holders, it would be insane for them to handle manual accounts. And so we can take up that example, and then you can see today digitally we can make n number of payments, right? As simple as, so I don't remember going to a branch last 1 year or maybe more period, right? So things have become easy also. So like you were discussing earlier, it's a mindset change, and I would correlate that again for this point as well. So what is data analytics? Maybe new practitioners, or we are also discussing a single member CA firm. How can a single member CA firm adopt AQMM? Yesterday we had a healthy discussion. So data analytics is not necessarily for any tool. Maybe I will correlate a Microsoft Excel also. It's a fantastic tool wherein lot of data it has. I don't know the number of items, but with the latest Microsoft version, it has the even the number of rows limitation has exceeded its bounds. And hence even a simple tool like a Microsoft Excel can be smartly used by a chartered accountant professional, just to analyze the data in different shape or form. And here again I would say that we should not restrict ourselves to say that we don't know how to use certain functionalities, certain advanced functionalities. in such modules. There are a lot of things available on online platforms by paying small fees. There are institutions such as Udemy offering various talented courses online. So you need not even visit anywhere, pay a small fees and try to enhance your personal skills. This will help to develop a so-called data analytics. Obviously, Institute has covered in a very fantastic manner the DCMM Volume 2, which you were referring to earlier. So practitioners and members should refer to this module. There's a lot of things to learn. Many start with small steps. I would say start with certain analytical techniques which are commonly available on the regular platforms, because otherwise if you don't change, if you don't start, there is no end to it, right? So my suggestion would be we should try to adopt things, have an open view, come out of your own boundaries, change the mindset, and I think things will happen.
Yes, agree. I think that's the right way to go about, at least
Right.
in somewhere. Yes. And I think
Want to add anything?
yeah, I think
Chandan, Mohit?
Yeah, I think so. Harsh gave a valid example of an Excel wherein if we get the complete data of a company, be it from a Tally or be it an Oracle, be it an SAP or any other customized software, try to get the complete information in Excel. And then I think so, then audit is endless. You can just go around and, for example, you can search for any of the words which you want. So from the narration, you'll get it. You can see a lot of analysis from a lot of entries with ending with what your dates, see whether the entries are passed on weekends, etc., etc. So that you'll come to know about the risk, etc. So I think so. It's only about getting the data in Excel or any other tool. There are a lot of tools like Tableau nowadays. You might be hearing, some of you might be having trainings. You can optimally use those tools. It's only about ensuring that the mindset is changed and we want to do a data analytics rather than just doing a vouching. That's all what I would say.
Do we have any questions from the other panelists or other members? Otherwise, I have one question, and maybe Chandan, you can take this up. We can discuss about. So, Chandan, according to you, what are the pros and cons of this AQMM for a firm?
Okay. Okay. I thought this question would have come from the participants. Definitely now from a firm perspective or an individual perspective, this AQMM is coming up for all of you and all of us. What are the benefits? What we believe if we follow AQMM, and what are the cons if we don't follow it, or what challenges we will have to follow it. That way I would try to take. So from an benefits perspective, I would say once we accept it in the right mindset, I think so then there is no challenge. It's only about accepting in the right mindset that we need to follow this with the proper having an objective. We get an objective, we can improve on our internal processes, internal controls, and majorly SQC1 and various other standards which are already applicable to us, but we are not following it. I would say few firms from a cost perspective doesn't follow it optimally. Now they can follow it. So automatically just see that you are de-risking the firm. Right now, some things which are mandatorily to be done by the firms are not done. Through AQMM, you will do it. So that is one of the benefit what I see is for the firms to see. Further, due to AQMM, we will try to use a lot of technology, best practices. We'll see a lot of cost is reduced on the assignment automatically because we will have a lot of synergies, technology, etc. We will get a more better productivity. We'll have a HR policies in place. We'll have infrastructure in place, etc., which will definitely give us a benefit from an overall perspective, I would say. In a nutshell, I would say AQMM is a tool which is not forced by ICI. It's about aiding to the firms to grow them for whatever level they are to the next levels. It's a step-by-step process of growing the firm from quality perspective, human resource perspective, and in IT infrastructure strategic level perspective. Definitely, I would say from a con perspective, yes, initially the firms which are smaller might incur some additional cost, but I think so gradually that cost will give a lot of benefits from a future perspective. Like just one of the item what Mr. Modi is saying, let's have a lot of Indian firms, or I would say the firms which are Indian originated firms and working globally. I think so AQMM is a tool which Institute has given us. Let's use that to scale up the firms which are I would say the firms which are emerging from our local cities like Pune, etc. That's what I think so is an helpful tool for us. I think so. If in do we have any other questions from participants? Please put that in the chat box, and we as a three panelists or trainers, we can answer those right now, or even if afterwards you want, you can connect us individually, you can ask us and we'll try to help that to you. Over to you, Avanti.
Thank you, sir.
We had few people who were trying to, maybe because of technology reasons or.
No, they can put in the chat box search,
Yeah,
but
yeah, maybe
we could
there
not
would be
see
some error.
anything. Yeah.
Maybe we will request again if people want to ask any questions, they can use the functionality.
Okay. If there has been any technical issues because of which somebody has not been able to ask the questions, I think we can wait for 5 more minutes and then we can address the questions if there are any. So participants, you're requested to put in the questions in the Q&A box, or if you want, you can raise your hand and I'm sure the speakers will address the questions one by one. So we'll wait for some more time.
Avanti, we today late evening, tomorrow morning, we'll share the presentation with you and Mr. Deepak, and you can send to the participants or host on the Pune ICI branch so that we can, if anyone is interested, they can look into the presentation, etc.
Sure, sir. I'm sure the participants must be eager to get the presentation because it was so simple, use it, and very picturesque. And I'm sure they all will also agree with me that it was a great session because there was absolute clarity on. I think we'll go to the vote of thanks if I can propose. I was just expressing my opinion, that's all. So yes, in case nobody has a question, can we go ahead? So I think there will be a vote of thanks directly, is it? So we are concluding the session, sir, is it?
Yeah, it's.
Can we conclude?
Yeah, we
I
can
don't see
conclude
any
from our
questions.
side. Yeah, it can be concluded from our side.
Okay. No questions yet.
Okay.
We can assume that there is absolute clarity on all of the aspects and we can move ahead to the vote of thanks. So I now present a vote of thanks to all our speakers for giving us deep insights into the topic and revealing some interesting facts, enlightening us with the minute details about AQMM and also giving us clarity on even the most basic questions that all of us face in our CA practice. And I'm sure with so much of information and such clarity, we can definitely improve in our practice the areas which we are lacking, and it will give us a structured approach, to scale up. So thank you, sir. Thank you all these speakers for such wonderful deliberation, and thank you for all the participants for joining as well. So wish you all a very good day ahead, and I think we'll conclude with this.
Okay. Thanks to
Sure.
all participants and institute.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
On my behalf, sign off from Chandan Lahoti.
Yeah, it was a fantastic session and it was a very patient audience. So thanks a lot for sparing out time in the busy session, busy season, and thanks.
Thank you, sir.